In this video, what we're going to learn is the difference between anxiety and panic attacks. By the end of this video, what you're going to be able to do is recognize the difference between the two and also start to learn ways on how to rebound more quickly to get through them. Let's get started. Now, the first thing to remember is there are a lot of common similarities, so we're going to go through a few of them here, okay? So something both of them share is they're both emotional experiences. You're going to learn pretty quickly that I don't spell well under pressure, so we're going to abbreviate a lot here. Now, not only are they emotional symptoms, but they're also, any guesses? Physical symptoms. And maybe the most glaring and obvious, but also important, they both have significant impacts on our lives. But first, let's break this down a little bit. What are some of the emotional experiences that both of these things have in common? For instance, both of them have fear and discomfort. I think we can agree on the fear and discomfort part for anxiety and panic attacks, right? Now, when it comes to the physical symptoms, there's plenty of experiences to go around here. So if yours isn't talked about, put in the comments something you experience because we want everyone to understand that they're not alone because you never know who that might help. Now, we're just going to name a few. Increased heart rate, sweating. Sometimes with the increased heart rate, we can have shortness of breath, and sweating can sometimes feel like the trembling or shaking. So we'll put trembling. We're going to abbreviate trembling. And as far as the impact goes, this is going to be really unique to you and how it impacts your daily life. But for instance, some things that it impacts my day is constant thinking and worry. I know this looks like a crazy chart, but stick with me. Okay, now that we understand some of the similarities, let's start to learn what the differences are between anxiety and panic attacks. One of the first main differences is the duration between the two. So we'll list here, panic attack will be on our left, and we'll put anxiety on our right. Now with anxiety, this is going to be a gradual onset. And what that means is it's going to be a slow buildup. Whereas a panic attack usually happens within minutes. Let's put a nice little arrow down here so we don't get confused, shall we? Now, how long do they last? When it comes to anxiety, it can be anywhere between minutes all the way to days. These can be long lasting. Some of us may feel like we've been having anxiety our entire life, and we may have. Now, when it comes to panic attacks, typically 10 to 20 minutes, but they can definitely feel much longer. If you're someone like me, we can have rolling panic attacks, which means after the 10 to 20 minutes, another one just quickly comes. That's where we can get confused with anxiety and panic attacks. We can have things such as rolling panic attacks that last much longer. So if you're someone like me, I feel you, I see you, and I empathize with you. And when it comes to anxiety, these can often be triggered by specific stressors. So that can be going out in public, which is known as social anxiety, or maybe health anxiety, worrying about your physical, your mental, your emotional state, and constantly thinking something's wrong. Those are specific stressors that are related to your anxiety. Now, the difference when it comes to panic attacks is this is sudden. Now, not every panic attack feels like it comes out of the blue because some people who have had panic attacks for a long time can start to recognize the early triggers, but typically an anxiety attack and a panic attack can be separated by the panic attack being sudden, feeling like it's coming out of nowhere, and the anxiety feeling like it's building up or being specific stressors that are causing the anxiety to occur. Now, we're going to move on to the symptoms and the differences between them. So panic attack will go over here again, and we'll throw anxiety right back onto the right-hand side because we like to stay consistent. We don't want to cause any more anxiety than we already have. So I'm going to list a few that go along with the two of them. And once again, if you experience anything specific to yourself, please put it in the comments because we want other people to feel like they're not alone because they may experience it as well. So anxiety, muscle tension, fatigue, don't mind my writing, irritability, That looks like way too many I's and R's. And irritability, restlessness. Can you tell that the more I'm writing, the sloppier it's getting, because now I'm only thinking about, am I spelling things correctly? And a big one, increased heart rate. That's an arrow. So increased heart rate is something I also experience with panic attacks. But remember, it's the duration in which this is happening. So a big trigger for me and knowing when I'm anxious is my irritability. I get incredibly irritable over tiny things. So something you can do is just take note of when you are anxious and the little things that are setting you off. And the little things that are setting you off are what you identify as your stressors. Now, when it comes to panic attacks, these are going to be more like a heart palpitation. So you're going to feel like your heart's pounding out of your chest. Maybe it's skipping a beat. Often reported, and something I also get, is chest pains. Now, the chest pains can range from mild to severe. Some people report it feels like they're having a heart attack. And I know in my case, I've gone to the emergency room because I thought I was having an active heart attack while I was out to dinner. Another one is shortness of breath. Now, a lot of these are going to be lumped together. It's often reported that a lot of them are happening at the same time. Another big one is fear of losing control. So that can be interpreted as feeling like you're going crazy, that you're not thinking typically or normally as it pertains to you. So fear of losing control, dizziness. People report feeling nauseous. I am not going to attempt to try to spell nauseous, so we're going to put nausea, period. A big one too that I don't typically have, but is fear of choking. So right at the gate, if we're just looking up and down what some of the symptoms are between panic attacks and anxiety, we're seeing that now the panic attacks list is much longer. Now, I surely could go a lot longer on the anxiety list, but you can see that the panic attacks are just much more severe, much more life-threatening, or so it feels. And one of the last things we're going to talk about is triggers. And there's going to be a little bit of an overlap between what we've already learned. So this is kind of like the conclusion, right? So with anxiety, some of the triggers can be these. We already talked about some of the stressors. So once again, that could be things specific to you. That could be being in public, worrying about your health, giving a presentation, those kind of things. Performance anxiety, social anxiety, health anxiety, those type of things, which can be very specific to your experience. And when it comes to panic attacks, yes, it can also be stressors. But the thing is, oftentimes with panic attacks, it feels like it's indescribable. Indescribable. The thing about them is, so they feel like they are coming out of nowhere. So the triggers can be anything ranging from stressors to those financial issues to whatever it may be. This is how I look at it. I look at the triggers of my panic attack is my anxieties building up, and then overflowing. Because when it comes to anxiety, these can be frequent, right? We can experience anxiety frequently, especially if we don't work with a therapist, a coach, a counselor, through exposure therapy, CBT, or anything like that. Whereas when it comes to panic attacks, they're often more sporadic. Now, that's not to say that we don't get them on a consistent basis. Like I've mentioned in the video, I have experienced rolling panic attacks for days on end. But that is not typical for most people. Oftentimes what I've learned is with a panic attack, the fear of the next panic attack starts another panic attack. And a great place to start and remember that is we have to address the anxiety in our life to start lowering the volume of those panic attacks. So something to remember is if they are more frequent with the panic attacks, that usually equals the disorder. So if you're having multiple panic attacks, whether weekly, monthly, whatever it may be, I'm not going to put a specific timeline on it. But at that point, it's probably qualifying under a disorder. And what I'll always recommend is speak to your personal doctor to see what it classifies as. And if you do have a disorder, maybe some qualified people to talk about it, whether that be a therapist, a certified mental health coach like myself, or a counselor, because being able to talk to somebody that is right for you is going to help a lot with this panic disorder. Trust me, I had to do it too. Now, I know that can be a lot to digest, so if you're looking for more specific ways to work through your anxieties, I'm going to link a video right here for you that's going to list 5 of the best ways to help work through your anxiety. Take care. Peace.